Hi everyone, welcome to Off the Podium. I have a guest from LA. I think he's in LA now. Alphonso Johnson, bassist, and someone who I've actually met. The thing about this podcast is that I've talked to many people from around the world, and many of them I have never met in my life. So this is great that I'm connecting with Alphonso. Welcome to Off the Podium. How are you feeling?
Good. Thanks for inviting me here today.
And you were just in Germany. How'd that go? What did you do? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was invited to a city called Markneukirchen, which is in the southern part of Germany, down near the Czech border. And every year they have a bass camp where I go to help teach students that come there from all around the world. And this year they just had a big party. So they, my wife and I were invited, and it was great. They had all these heavy metal bands play, and they had a big fireworks display at the end on Saturday evening, which everybody was just incredible. Yeah. So Warwick throws a great party, and they build a great instrument and a great amplifier.
Wow. And, this is jumping to a different topic completely. But I was just trying to get information and find out as much as I can about you before we talk. And one thing I realized on your website, you played with an orchestra, and that was pretty recent, actually. You were in an orchestra. You played in somewhere in LA. What was that like? And I didn't even know you play in orchestras.
Yeah, about... I guess 4 or 5 years ago, I was asked to become a part of the San Fernando Valley Symphony. And that's the conductor, James Domine, was actually my conductor when I took orchestra class at Cal State Northridge. Or even before that, when I was over at Pierce College. So he heard my playing and introduced me to the principal bassist there. And of course, I had to audition. And they liked my playing, so I stayed on.
Yeah.
And after I graduated from Pierce College, they asked me to go play with, whenever they have concerts around town.
Yeah. Well, the thing that you said about Northridge, you were a student just recently at Northridge, and that's how we met. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. When my kids grew up and moved out of the house, I, like most parents, started thinking about what it is that I wanted to do with my life and career now that I have more time, free. And one of the things I always wanted to do was get my degree, my master's degree. So I started back then at Pierce College to get my associate, and when I got my associate degree, I transferred over to Cal State Northridge. And now I'm working on my master's degree in music education there.
Oh, man. And the funny thing is that you've been on faculty at a few colleges, I think Cal Arts, and also you're at USC now, from what I understand. But you're also in college as a student. That I find that interesting and funny and great, obviously.
Yeah. I know most of my students can't believe that I would spend time to go back to school, but it's a way for me to keep abreast of all the changes in education. First of all, it's constantly changing and evolving.
Yeah.
And so by me being a student, I'm aware of what's being asked of the students, and I can kind of incorporate that into my teaching skills as well.
Yeah.
And just, as you get older, you got to keep the brain active. It's a muscle.
Yeah, of course.
And if you don't use it, they say you lose it. So I don't have any intention of allowing that to happen.
Yeah, so you're in music education, you study music education at CSUN. Why is that important? Why is music education important?
Because it gives me the tools to be able to pass on all the stuff that I've learned over the years as a professional musician. Very difficult to do that. It's not really teaching. I don't really teach anybody anything, but I try to evoke the sense of music that they already have within them.
Yeah.
How to draw that out and how to share my experiences with them so they can grow and become.
You've played with some renowned figures in the world of music, and the first thing that came to my eye was the weather report. You mind sharing some stories, maybe some of your experiences working with them?
Yeah, it was in 1974. I was playing with a group called the Mangione Quartet,
Mm-hmm.
and we were opening for Weather Report in my hometown of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And as we were performing, during part of our set is it's a quartet, but it's flugelhorn, saxophone, drums, and bass. So Chuck always gave me a lot of room to solo and, change the harmonic structure when it was his solo behind bass and drums. So at the time that I took the bass solo, I looked over and there was Wayne Shorter. So, he's kind of checking me out. After we finished our set, the promoter came up and said, Joe and Wayne would like to meet you.
Huh.
So that was a big thrill for me, and I got to meet them, and they invited me out to California
Mm-hmm.
to play. Actually, it wasn't even to play; it was to audition.
Wow.
And part of my audition wound up being a recording called "Mysterious Traveler."
Uh-huh.
That was my first recording with Weather Report.
Wow. And you've done a few with them, right? You've done a couple of recordings with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, just 3 recordings with the band. Mysterious Traveler, Black Market,
Mm-hmm.
and a record called Tail Spinning.
Yeah. Well, inspirations. What inspires Alphonso Johnson after so many years of playing? What gets you going every day, and what motivates you and inspires you every day to work and do music?
Besides espresso? Well, I think it's just little things, we have a beautiful plumeria tree planted in our front yard.
Mm.
It was inspiring. I was watering my plant last night. One of my neighbors walked by and was telling me how much she admired the smell, and it was just a beautiful thing for her to see as she walks her dog. So that's inspiring,
Yeah.
And then, of course, hearing so many great female bassists in Germany was very inspiring.
Uh-huh.
The level of musicianship across the board has just gotten so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And little things. Little things inspire me.
Yeah, and you said female bassists, and the world of music, especially well, both gender wise and also racially, it's been tough over the years. What have some of your experiences been like? What have you felt, as a young black a musician coming through the ranks, playing and doing what you're doing? What have some of your experiences been like? Anything that you want to share, or any stories that come to mind?
Yeah, I think the acceptance during my term of coming up was mostly about, can you play?
Uh-huh.
The older musicians wouldn't even let you come up and sit in unless they had heard of you or had some idea that you at least knew your instrument well and had a sense of repertoire and history,
Yeah.
But as we both know, for many years, women and minorities were kind of excluded from the business side of the industry and weren't allowed to reap some of the benefits that many other musicians were allowed to get.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those boundaries and doors have been opened. And, see so much progress. I mean, still a lot to be made, but I see a lot of musicians being able to benefit from the hard work that the musicians before us laid down in order to make that possible.
Yeah. One thing that I talked with Christian McBride, who's a fellow bassist, I had him on the program, and we talked about how, well, I asked the question of how I felt that classical music and jazz was kind of following the classical music scene, and not in a good way, in my opinion, in a bad way, because they've taken the jazz has kind of gone into the academic world. Jazz has gone into the concert halls, and in some ways stepped away from being the people's music, and also maybe lost some fans over the years, or maybe not, in your opinion. I'm not sure, but I wanna get your take, and I wanna know how you feel about that whole process, because you've had a long career. You're 66 if I'm not mistaken. I checked your Wikipedia page. I don't know how correct that is, but
that's right. Yes.
But I just it's frustrating because I personally probably listen to more jazz than I do classical, even though I conduct classical music primarily. What are your feelings about this, and why has it taken this route?
Well, I think any music runs the risk of becoming exclusive.
Yeah.
In other words, not available to the masses because of the way it's marketed. And, for many years, musicians like Bach and Mozart, their music was just played before kings and queens and their friends. It wasn't really available to the public. And I think jazz and today's classical music has the possibility, the potential to follow that same route because of it not being made available, not just by the musicians, but the people that kind of control the advertising and the marketing of the music. But one thing that jazz music has always done is it has always evolved, and you can see that throughout the years where when there was bebop, and then there was soul jazz. You had artists that were exclusively instrumental in their approach, like Coltrane, for instance. And then you had jazz artists like Hannibal Adderley, who could, stand his ground with anybody, but decided to also evolve into another form of jazz, but it was danceable. It was, music that people could tap to. It drew in a younger audience, and it kept evolving. Yeah.
I want to know about the, and correct me if I'm wrong on the pronunciation, but Bamba website. What is that? What's the name? Where's the name come from? And why that name for your website? And is that, what is it?
Yeah. And Bamba is a African word. It's from the Tashkwahili tribe in Africa. And it just means tall and narrow. To kind of basically translate it into English. And that name was given to me by a friend of mine, Sherman Ferguson, a drummer from Philadelphia. And I decided I liked the name, so I wanted to keep it for my music publishing company, which is called Bamba Music.
I see. All right, going back a little bit, I want to know what a record, maybe a record that you listened to growing up, or an artist that was really inspirational. What was that turning point for you, or what was that first connection to music that you might have had?
I grew up listening to records that we call 45s.
Yeah.
And 45, I guess, with the speed, revolutions per minute. The disc would spin on the turntable.
Yeah.
And those were the records that my brothers and sisters purchased. So I grew up listening to a lot of what we call doo-wop music in Philadelphia. And when I decided to play bass, that was the music I first learned how to play. And then when I later on got to junior high school, I started playing with the orchestra at school and got my classical training there. So I never lost track of that music, which is the root of my playing. You know, the R&B music and the vocals and the harmonies that they did. And even today, I think that still carries on into the music that I most love to play.
Yeah. Wayne Shorter, the tour that you did with him in 1996. Any stories? Anything interesting and fun that you might want to share with us, or just your whole experience?
Yeah, it was the whole. It's hard to separate events. It was just an amazing thing for me to be on stage with two of my still heroes, you know, in music, and for them to value my input and opinion, and just to have laughs and jokes with them while we were on the train or on an airplane going from city to city. And then, of course, to top it all off, I got to meet Joe's family and his kids, and Wayne took me to his house in Newark to meet his mother. And that was just, those experiences are just incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And they shape you.
Yeah.
You know, they change your life.
Yeah. As musicians, you know, especially you having such a prolific career, as you know, just being on tour and also recording a lot, being away from the family a lot of the times, you know, sometimes they might travel with you, but you know, being away from them, spending so much time in music, and then in 2010 receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Bass Player magazine. What does that mean to you? What does it mean when you get appreciated and respected for everything that you've done, especially sometimes for the little money or the little financial payback that you actually receive? You know, of course, you know, we get paid as musicians, but it's never really enough, and it's not. I mean, you deserve much more than you've ever gotten, and I don't even know how much you've made. But what does it mean? What does it mean to you?
It's hard to, you know, it's hard to put a price on time not spent with your kids.
Yeah.
That's what they say. It's priceless, right?
Yeah.
When you have someone in you're blessed enough to have someone in your life that you love and admire, and just want to see everything humanly possible to happen in a positive way for them. When you have to go away from them to do your work, it's difficult, you know. And I enjoy my work. You know, I don't go out and have a bad time. So I'm very blessed to have the lifestyle and profession that I've enjoyed over the years. But, you know, every artist has to endure this. So, you know, I don't feel like I was at a disadvantage or anything. I enjoyed my time at work. And when I come home, you know, you try and make up for it, try to do extra things and be more involved in their life.
Yeah.
So
it's a broad question, but I want to know where you see the future of jazz. You know, having lived through the different decades, the long time that you've spent in jazz so far and will continue to do so, but where do you see jazz, you know, 15, 20, 30 years from now? Not too far down the road, but where do you see it? Where is it going?
I don't know, but I think it'll keep evolving. I see groups like Snark Puppy, you know, for instance, and they have a very interesting influence of Weather Report and like fusion music, but also with the rock element, you know. And I think all that's very hopeful, you know, when I see bands like that playing. Who knows where it's going to go, but it'll definitely keep evolving, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, people will always be playing bebop, and there will always be an audience for blues music. But I think the ability for jazz music to adapt to the times has proven itself over the years to be one of the things that keeps it alive.
Yeah. And, you know, you've played both electric bass and upright bass. What do you recommend to students? What do you recommend to young up-and-coming jazz bassists? To play both or to concentrate on one? What's your take on that?
I'd say learn everything possible. Play bass, play drums, play piano, you know, play anything that's going to help you to grow as a musician and be able to understand what it's like for other musicians that have to play music that you might compose or arrange.
Yeah.
Just gives you a better way of understanding what their challenges are.
Yeah, of course. And another question similar to that, but for musicians, for young kids in general, you know, you've struggled with you know, maybe making a living in the music, and many musicians do. I mean, some are fortunate or some are more talented, but it all depends. It's a wide variety of people out there, and they all try to make a living in music. What do you recommend young up-and-coming musicians in the 21st century to, you know, to better themselves or to make a career in music? What are your suggestions, if any?
I think that the best thing is to diversify. Don't just do one thing. Don't just be a bassist. Today you have to be a bassist, composer, arranger, producer. You have to conductor, you know, like yourself.
Yeah.
You know, the more diversified you are, the more I think you'll have a better understanding of the whole purpose of music, what it does from every aspect, you know. And I think that will allow you to survive in the industry. You know, a lot of how I earn living or earn income is through music royalties. And that happens while I'm sleeping, you know. So you there are lots of ways to have that, have music in your life and make a living as a musician, but just don't depend on one source.
Yeah. And what's next for Alphonso Johnson? What's the next project? What are you most excited for next? What's happening?
I just released my new CD called Metaphors. And I'm very excited about getting it out to, you know, as many people as possible. I'm looking at several possible promotional people, what do you call it, publicists.
Yeah.
And then probably early in November, I'll have a booking agent over in Europe that I've been working with, see about booking some of the music festivals over in Europe for next summer.
You know one thing, both in classical music and it seems like in jazz, especially nowadays, people are fascinated with traveling to Europe and playing there. What's the deal? I mean, jazz is an American music, right? I mean, that's how we think about it. That's where it started, right? And you know, so many jazz musicians like to travel to Europe extensively, sometimes more so than actually in America. What's the deal with this?
Yeah, festivals are set up and sponsored by the city. And in America, they're set up and sponsored by promoters.
Yeah.
And that's different. Most promoters have their festivals set up based on how many tickets you're going to sell. And that's why you see so many R&B artists at the jazz festivals now.
Wow. One of the last questions, but what does Alphonso Johnson do on his free time? If you have any free time outside of music, what do you do?
I spend time with my family. You know, I have 2 kids. I'm married, and 2 dogs. Like I said, that walk me every morning. I don't walk them. And you know, I just try to relax. I'm into new music. I like playing right now I have to learn the William Tell Overture.
Oh, wow.
And Beethoven's Fifth for our next concert coming up in September. And a concerto for violin by Max Brunch.
Oh, wow. That's a fun program.
Yeah, it's a full program.
Yeah.
And then I have a gig with guitarist from USC. Oh, it's terrible. I can't think of his name right now.
Huh.
Anyway, I've got gigs coming up, so I have to learn the music ahead of time for those gigs. And then, of course, I'm studying for my classes. So it's a pretty full day.
Oh, man. You're a busy guy.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, was there anything that we missed? Is there anything that you wanted to talk about we didn't get to? I'm sure there's much more, but
this was a good conversation. I'm glad you asked me to do this.
Yeah, it was great, and I would love to have you back on, and hopefully someday we'll actually do this in person instead of over phone. But it was an absolute honor, sir. I wish you the best in your future projects, and hopefully I'll see you perform live sometime soon.
Thank you, and same here. Let me know when you're conducting. I'd love to come out and hear some music.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.